Yeah, I know. It's been 3 days into Dante and the Damned Dozen's ride on the crazy train, and already things have gone wrong. After that fight with what appears to be the passengers, Don Quixote noted that they might look like the passengers, but they lack any sense. Ishmael compared them to palidified people made by the pallid whale, when it was alive. Of course. Don Quixote was hesitant until the last second to fight them. This wasn't a decision that she made lightly. Normally, Faust would tell her more about what they were fighting against before the fight began. Then she wouldn't be burdened by the thoughts of harming the innocent. But Faust had her own problems. She was searching the area, observing the bodies and looking for anything useful for the investigation. Yi Sang was noticing this inquisitiveness of hers. Ishmael noticed this as well. She usually had all the answers while they were trying to come up with an explanation. Dante could see that Faust's behavior was noticeably different. Faust told them that they're not dead. This surprised Don Quixote. Faust pointed out that they're tethered to one another by something. Don Quixote observed this, and they noticed this as well. Faust continued by saying that the flow of time had ceased there. The connections that tether bodies to life and away from death remains intact. Dante was relieved that Faust was able to figure out what was going on, even if it took longer than usual. Dante tried to reassure them that they got this. Rodia wanted to know what this was about. Dante told her that it was nothing that she needed to be concerned about. Dante briefly forgot that they were content to just agree with Faust rather than argue with her. Although Yi Sang wanted to ask her about that more, how the flow of time ceased there. She was hesitant to speak more about this. She was feeling briefly regretful. Yi Sang observed that the flow of time ceased enough for an extra-dimensional observer that it seemed to stop, asking what her perspective was. Faust saw this as the most rational suggestion of his. Sinclair was concerned that Faust got something wrong. Dante was nervous that Yi Sang possibly being onto Faust, asking the time expert to summarize it into easier language. Yeah, as in enough for a narrow-minded gym teacher to understand. Yi Sang did so. Thankfully, Dante was successful in preventing them from questioning the reliability of Faust's knowledge. Yi Sang told them the short version, that death was not there aboard the warp train. Roger asked him to get to the point, and Yi Sang agreed to do so. Don Quixote noted that one of them had their heart still beating. This was despite the torso being dismembered. This was a relief for her. Yi Sang compared it as an unassembled jigsaw puzzle, immobilized and separated, yet death has been eternally delayed while the warp train is in transit. Don Quixote understood enough to know that they're not dead. Currently. Faust explained that if the several parts were all connected, no matter how entangled their bodies might become, they could be gathered to form a single passenger, which is what the W Corp cleanup agent does. Ultis understands that they have to reconstruct the puzzle once the journey was over. It was still baffling to Dante that a job like that existed. What about a dozen suicide soldiers that you can make sure they can't stay dead? Gregor wanted to find a wing that wasn't baffling. Dante understood that as long as the train arrives at the station, they'll be put back together like nothing happened. Dante understood that the cleanup crew put them back together to restore them to what they were when they boarded the trains. Understanding this via the W Corp identities, which was more visceral when looked at in person. Yes, while Don Quixote was relieved, she was still disturbed by this. Dante understood that Faust wanted to make Don Quixote feel relief, trying to cheer her up in her own way. Usually she wouldn't bother. Then Faust called Dante over, and Dante wanted to know why, and Faust was silent, and Dante understood that this was time for whispering. She confirmed that this was intended to collect additional intelligence. Dante offered to do something, if there's anything that they can tell her. Then they noticed that she was gazing at chunks of flesh, her gaze fixed upon them. She asked if they were distortions or abnormalities. Dante wanted to tell her about that. They understood that they're clearly not humans. They felt the same as monsters. They felt an unclear sensation. Something like that was felt before, but couldn't identify where. It wasn't the same feeling as abnormalities, distortions, or even peccadilla. Dante told her that they're closer to distortions, although Dante didn't believe that they were either of those. Faust asked if it was difficult to be certain. They told her that they're very similar to distortions, but different, asking if Faust doesn't know. Faust told them that the network might know, but it's inaccessible right now. Dante felt like apologizing for that. Faust didn't see any need, although Dante's info, even though it wasn't clear, helps her to deduce something useful. That and collecting intelligence herself and creating deductions based on sparse information was quite... Then she paused, holding a bloody slimy chunk of flesh in her hands. The smile shocked Heathcliff, and Ryushu approved of this, hoping for a playmate. After a round of intelligence gathering from Faust, who is basically the stand-in for Hercule Poirot here, considering that this is loosely based on Murder on the Orient Express. Well, Virgilius isn't with them. They opened the door to the next cabin. This time they were greeted by a loud commotion, and not what they thought previously. Honglu thought that they sounded like other survivors. Don Quixote announced herself to the passengers in danger, telling them not to worry, for she has arrived to... Then the fixer looks like she's from the same office as the last one that they encountered, was alarmed by this, warning them not to come any closer, asking who the they were. This four-armed woman, she suddenly jumped in their path. Faust noted that she appeared without warning. She stumbled due to this fixer's swinging arms slapping her as she pushed them away. This fixer replied by saying that they didn't give her any warning before they practically kicked the door down. Gregor asked if she wouldn't mind moving that huge sword out of their faces. It was a bit threatening. She objected to this as she was trying to protect the civilians in that car. She then noted that Gregor had a bioprosthetic, noting that he's been around for a while. She thought that those went out of style long ago. Well, she's not wrong, as that bioprosthetic is a biomimetic arm created by a G-Corp that no longer exists. Not since the Smoke War, that was over 10 years before. The G-Corp that exists now deals in gravity-altering spheres. This was irritating to Gregor, offering to demonstrate what he's got in him. Then Don Quixote lightened the mood, somewhat, by asking if she's from the north, if that's the garb of those from there. And this annoyed Heathcliff, as this wasn't the time for that. He then asked the Fixer to make way for them as they're in the same mess. The Fixer then looks at those that entered her car and refused them, asking why should she trust them? Do they have any proof that they're not bitten? She didn't want to let her efforts to protect that place go to waste. Heathcliff didn't know what she was talking about. The Fixer saw them as completely lost. If they were in one of the economy cars, they must have seen... Then she realised that they're from the first class car. Ishmael confirmed this and they just woke up. This didn't add up to that Fixer, as they didn't look affluent enough for that, as first class seats are meant for... Then asking why didn't they say so? She identified herself as Sasha, and she's from the multi-crack office. In fact, she's the representative of them. She then lowered her weapons and allowed them to pass. Faust then asked if she's not left that car for the duration of the ride. Sasha told her that she hasn't. They warped over to District 20 after picking up one of their contracts, not believing that the train broke down, questioning if it's even broken. She's not feeling hungry or sleepy at all, thinking that it's shady bull. Well, it's certainly shady. Sinclair was surprised by this, that she can feel this, even in a prosthetic body. Well, it's because she didn't have everything replaced. She couldn't live without her favourite hobby, having a nap after a pleasant meal. She had high-quality parts installed, so that she could still feel hunger and feel sleepy. Faust then asked if anything else of note also occurred. Well, it certainly did for Sasha. She said this as she was swinging her arms. Otis thought that this was distracting, asking if it's hard for her to speak without being so hyper. Ishmael added that she could at least stop swinging her arms like that. Sasha apparently couldn't do that, as she broke all her prosthetic arms in a fight, and she's calibrating a new set, so she had to keep swinging them if she wanted them to sync up with her other parts. She doesn't know what the is going on, but people started to turn into weird monsters. She doesn't know who they are, and they weren't able to understand them. Thankfully, her train car didn't have a lot of them. She chopped up those that appeared and hauled those that she could to that vacant car. Then one passenger was sobbing. Another was unhinged as they were counting up to 3,202 red colours. Faust noted that Sasha decided to protect them, despite the potential risk that they might transform as well. Don Quixote expected this of Sasha, seeing it as an expected duty of any valorous fixer to stand guard in the front lines against evil to protect the weak. I'm not the only one who's asking that. There must be a reason why she's that deluded, as fixers are soldiers of fortune. It's rare to find one that isn't self-serving. Sasha has been keeping a close eye on those that she's protecting over the last 3 days, and so far, no transformations. past that car. Hell can't be imagined to be much worse. Wait, worse than your average Tuesday in that city? Although, in this case, she defines this as monsters that constantly try to claw their way to the front of the train. She believed that some went down at the rearmost train cars, which spread quickly until it reached there. Faust saw what she meant by that. That's all Sasha knows about the situation. Then she asked what their story was. Why are those rich first-class passengers suddenly deciding to grace themselves with their presence? They were completely safe in their first-class cars, so what's their business there? Faust told her that W Corp hired them to solve this case. She hesitated, and then Don Quixote decided to call themselves fixers. Yeah, they had to think of something quickly. She confirmed this. Well, they are mercenaries rather than fixers, but they were hired by W Corp. Sasha was impressed that they got them all first-class tickets, believing that their office must be rolling in it. This then made Sasha realize that W Corp knew this would happen. She wasn't entirely believing that W Corp contracted them. Faust then reminded Sasha that contracts and the fulfillment of them are highly important to fixers, reminding her that W Corp is one of the more secretive of the wings. Sasha understood this to mean that they've signed a non-disclosure agreement. She knew enough to not do anything to attract the attention of those glorified lawyers of the OEFI Association. Although she still wanted proof of them being hired by W Corp. Faust then showed her the master keycard. Yes, the master keycard that was given to them by W Corp. It can open most doors aboard that train. Dante saw this as the best way that they had to prove that they were contracted by W Corp. This was convincing enough for Sasha, as she used that to open the path between first class and economy class. She had nothing to gain from prying into this. She also understood that they had to go all the way to the back of the train to complete their job. Faust confirmed this. Sasha got out of their way and then, with one of her free hands, pointed towards the opposite door, believing this to be their funeral or victory lap. Well, if they're good enough. Don Quixote thanked Sasha for her words of courage, trusting her with the protection of the car that they were in, and the innocents there, while she and the others took care of that situation. Sasha was silent, likely thinking, what the is wrong with her? Then a curious child asked if Don Quixote was a fixer, there to save them from the monsters in the car behind them. This surprised Don Quixote. As she and the others were about to leave, that child was pulling on Don Quixote's coattails. Don Quixote confirmed this. The child asked if she was a famous fixer. Don Quixote told the child that she was a profoundly illustrious fixer. The child wanted to be a fixer too, just like her. The rattled passenger told that child not to pester Don Quixote, apologizing to her, saying that she's her daughter, and Don Quixote told her not to worry, it was no bother at all, telling her to dream of becoming a fixer. Faust found it fortunate that someone like Sasha was aboard that train. That child's survival was ensured. Sasha didn't see a need to keep up appearances between those in the same line of work. She was collecting emergency contract fees from each of them, asking if they're on something. Well, Don Quixote might be. Faust? No. She understood well enough. That Sasha also understood that, as the Joker would put it, if you're good at something, never do it for free. Dante understood that Don Quixote didn't need to hear what was just said, and Ishmael didn't think that Faust could be like that, and Faust didn't know what she meant. Ishmael knew that Faust understood that there was no way a fixer would protect them out of goodwill, but she decided to go along with Don Quixote's delusions anyway. Faust was silent at this. Ishmael considered this to be a good move. She didn't want Don Quixote to act out again. Ishmael remarked that Faust saw the twinkle in her eyes. Don Quixote's always been energetic, but she's bouncier in mood than usual. Then Faust said, "Eyes," striding towards Sasha with a question. Sasha made it clear that she was charging 30,000 Arn per inquiry. Faust saw this as unsound of her, for someone who claims to be in the same line of work with them. Or rather, the same line of work as them, asking if she considered the possibility that once their contract was successfully completed, they could include references to a particularly cooperative associate office in their report to W Corp. Yes, this referral to a wing was clearly considered valuable enough. So Sasha let her ask away. Faust asked if the eyes of the monsters that she was facing were red by any chance. This caused Sasha to pause, swinging her arms, either in thought or trying to recall something. Then she answered she didn't know, as they were red all over, asking if eye color was something special, as prosthetics and augmentations can mean they have red eyes. Even the lady with the big sword has them, likely mentioning Ryushu, asking if someone is paying cash for information on those with red eyes. Faust said no, saying that it was a question of no significance, nodding in her direction, and then opened the door to the next car, meeting the next group of monsters there. What Ryushu saw was impressive to her. She was able to see her vision of art after all, but for the others, it confirmed their worst fears. It was a scene that appeared to them as if it was straight out of a painting of hell. Hell Screen, being the source of Ryushu herself. Yes, that's the source material, but I won't go into detail about her yet. Her story hasn't arrived yet. As for Faust's question about red eyes, there's one particular group that has them, that doesn't have augmentations or prosthetic replacement eyes. After fighting their way through more of those transformed passengers, Sinclair remarked on how battling in a narrow hallway took a lot out of him. Honglu saw how difficult it was to make big movements when there's not a lot of room to move around. It takes more energy than he might think, especially for those who, that use longer weapons, such as a halberd or a guandao. Dante understood that the numbers of their enemy was wearing down the damned dozen, even though they weren't much harder than what they fought earlier. Well, if the Battle of Thermopylae, and sorry if I've butchered the pronunciation, is any indication, narrow passages help to negate the advantage of superior numbers. Well, it certainly worked out for the Spartans led by King Leonidas, at least until the Persians found the goat path. Sinclair asked Faust what those things were, and Faust was silent at this. Rodia was wondering that as well. Why was she so tight-lipped? Faust said that they are... Gregor wanted her to finish that sentence. Then she asked what they think they are. This surprised Sinclair, as they just asked her the same question. Then he asked her if she's giving them a chance to come up with their own answers, before giving her own. Dante understood that Sinclair was interpreting Faust's silence as this. Sinclair observed some things that he learned after fighting them. They didn't attack out of anger or if they were in the way, and Don Quixote confirmed this. They charged, and didn't seem to do that out of hunger or thirst. Ishmael didn't think that hunger or thirst was a thing aboard those trains. Basalt then determined from the enemy's attack patterns that they don't act based on rational thoughts. So even less than Heathcliff does. The source of this behavior traces back to primal aggressiveness. Otis couldn't argue against that. Faust then asked if there was anything else. Sinclair noticed their red eyes, their bodies wreathed in blankets of red. Ryushu smelled blood, likely what they're made of. Yisang saw that it was crystallized blood. Faust thanked them for their useful inputs. Then Dante whispered to her a question. What did she learn from that? Faust considered them fortunate. She read about this when reading up on their next destination. Next destination might involve... Oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself there. Now she read this moments before they boarded the warp train. It was also useful in resolving this situation. The others provided much useful intelligence when it comes to categorizing and identifying important evidence from what was available to them. Considering Dante's advice to be correct, Dante asked if she knew what to do to blow the case open. She couldn't be entirely certain right now, but it's a good place to start. Then she turned around to face the others. She presented a solution to what they were dealing with. Roger asked if it was something other than beating the out of what's in the way. Faust didn't think that would change, but she's about to give a better understanding of the purpose behind their contract with W-Corp, and a possible means of finding the completion method. The incidents on the warp train, and others that are connected to it, involves a blood fiend. Oh, it's one of those. More of them have appeared after the White Nights and Dark Days as a unique kind of distortion. Although they predated the White Nights and Dark Days, according to scattered information. And according to this information, the first Blood Fiends visited a mansion and likely encountered Nosferatu, a powerful abnormality, and sampled his blood. Blood Fiends prefer not to draw attention to themselves and blend in within the city. The head don't consider them to be serious enough of a threat, where as long as they pay their taxes like everyone else and don't cause too much trouble, they'll leave them alone. They even run businesses such as hotels where they take non-lethal amounts of blood as part of the price that they pay to stay in the rooms, as Moses, Ezra, and Vesper Crabrow did in The Distortion Detective. Elena was a rogue element, one of the newer Blood Fiends that didn't know or indeed follow the rules of the elders of her kind. She was taken care of for the first time by Roland and Angelica. This was before Roland became the Black Silence. The second time was by Bina, who was, used to be Guardian, a former arbiter of the head, and sadistic blood knight. And the third time, well, it was by whoever was chosen to face her, alongside Pluto, yesterday's promise, who acted like a cross between Mephisto and the Djinn. And then we have the third one that she fought alongside by Argalia, the Blue Sicko. There are also fixers that specialize in hunting blood fiends. So just because they're not seen as worthy of extermination by the head, it doesn't mean that others don't want them dead. And so there are those willing to offer their services for the right price to exterminate them. Well, I can see why Limbus Company was hired to take care of this problem, as this is quite a unique kind of distortion, as it's uniform to those with it, even if it wasn't spread directly. Much as Pecatulum are consistent with each type, although the NV variant copies the damned dozen throughout the multiverse. Dante didn't know what Faust was talking about regarding the Blood Fiend. Even Don Quixote wasn't aware of what one of those was, which surprised Gregor. She's usually an expert on obscure lore. Apparently she's not heard of them, unless she lets an article on them slip from her memory. Then again, your past might as well be multiple choice. Dante could tell this word was unknown to her. Sinclair thought that they were monsters in stories to scare children at night, afraid of garlic and sunlight. No, those are vampires, completely different. Clearly, Bram Stoker's Dracula survived in that world. Honglu heard differently, that the fear of garlic and sunlight was just a rumour. What they were afraid of was water. No, that's supposed to be holy water. Unless you're thinking of the Legacy of Kain series, where the touch of water was like acid to most vampires. That's not true either. If any of those were true, then they'd either use garlic gas grenades, UV lamps, and water guns to dispatch them. Faust was silent, likely unsure of what to say. Aurutius, on the other hand, was briefed on them in the past, while she served as a commanding officer. Likely in the Smoke War, if her Zayn EGO image is any implication, which was similar to Gregor's, specifically what was out the window. She's also seen the dregs that they command. Her memory wasn't very clear, although she's quite certain that those monsters don't resemble what she's just seen. Ah yes, that would at least explain the appearance of the Vermilion Cross during the battle between Elena and Bainar. Ryushu saw one who called themselves a blood fiend among the ranks of one of the fingers. But what they commanded weren't like those rubber-textured ones. Which finger? That might just be one of the pinky. That just had a nasty-sounding name to seem more imposing, as that didn't sound like any of the others. Well, at the very least, that one didn't spawn dregs with abandon like the one they're about to deal with. Asking if Faust was supposed to know this already. Faust saw that some have encountered blood fiends in the past, so a long-winded explanation seems unnecessary. What they face so far aren't blood fiends. They're dreg-like beings that fail to become kindreds called blood bags, at least according to the relevant information that she's aware of. Ryushu saw that as not a terrible name, and Dante wanted to know why they were called blood bags. Faust told them that it's impossible for passengers to disappear aboard warp trains under normal circumstances. Their reserve of intelligence regarding warp trains, or W Corp, is vast, if incomplete. They can't find a possible exemption to that rule. There is, however, a previously unseen variable. Ishmael can tell that she's implying that blood fiends can completely erase people from existence. Faust corrected her by saying that they're either dissolved or vaporized. This was disturbing to Ishmael. Faust put it into perspective, as usually, no matter how violent the passengers of the warp train were, the cleanup crew, once they've reassembled everyone, can load a save state to before all that happened. And that includes cannibalism. And this disgusted Sinclair. Faust continued by saying that since time for all inside had stopped while the train was in transit, digestion doesn't happen, so even devoured passengers can be restored. Brutus understood that to get the pieces of passengers, the cleanup crew would need to gut the passengers to retrieve the pieces and put them back together via the vein-like things connecting each passenger. Faust then went on to say that it doesn't apply to blood bags. They're obsessed with blood. Their existence hinges on supplying themselves with the blood of their victims. They need to consume a small amount of it to maintain their forms. Gregor then asked if she just said that digestion wasn't a thing while they're in transit in the warp train. Faust deduced that consumption of blood for blood fiends and blood bags is different from how humans would consume nutrients. Apparently to them, blood is a accumulation, something that forms the self, including but not limited to emotions, ambitions, wealth, purpose of existence. They spend their blood at will, a process isolated from digestion and other biological processes. Heathcliff heard crickets chirping, and then made it clear that he didn't follow even half of that. Yi-Sang then said that they exist in frozen time, yet his emotions remain and continue to spark in him. Heathcliff agreed with that. Yi-Sang continued by saying that whatever is causing this, or if they remain like this, once emotions have passed, they don't continue. The passengers' will to live, the worth of their existence atrophy even in that ceased time, stating that Faust wanted to compare how emotions are to them, and how blood fiends consider blood. Gregor then realized it's why she said that the blood was vaporized. Ishmael continued by saying that the blood that binds the chunks of flesh together will also evaporate, so they can't be pieced together. Massault saw no flaw in that logic. Dante noted the silence after that. That was way too much info to process at once. Well, for anyone that isn't Faust, Yi-Sang, and Massault. Dante admitted that all of them didn't know what to make of this either. Yi-Sang wanted to ask a few questions to Faust, asking if the blood bags are direct creations of blood fiends. If that's the case, what methods do they... Faust interrupted him by saying that the information is inaccessible at this point. Which was true, just not for the reasons that she wanted him to think. She avoided Yi-Sang's gaze. Dante could do nothing about this. The others had enough stress as things already stood. They didn't need more from finding out what was happening with Faust. This was something best avoided. Thankfully, Yi-Sang understood this, and she mentioned that some information was inaccessible to her, but at some point in the future it would become accessible. Remembering what she said in the book on the Fairy Festival, Yeah, she did say that, as while she had access to information, not all of it was immediately available. Although Faust could speculate that it involves direct physical contact, if that wasn't the case, they'd be the first ones to be turned, as they're the ones that are most likely to get in the way of the Blood Fiend's plans. Yi-san couldn't argue with that. This angered Don Quixote. She understood that the villain of a Blood Fiend must be hiding something in the warp train. Faust calmly confirmed this and added that they're based around the back of the warp train, based on where the blood bags were coming from. Don Quixote was happy about this. She wanted to bring peace to the innocent passengers that have been taken by the Blood Fiend. Then Faust whispered to Dante. Dante thought that Don Quixote was invigorated by this recent information. The others were satisfied now that they had a clear goal and where to find it. Faust wanted to tell Dante that they needed to order the others to get on with it, and Dante did so, noting to themselves that they're making the best of what they had, and they need to move forward while fighting all that stood in the way. They encountered passengers. As they fought through the blood bags, made up of a mix of passengers, Don Quixote found a live one in that car that they were on. She sprinted towards the survivor. The cleanup agent told him to stay away from him, seeing them as monsters. Gregor told him that they're not monsters, asking if he's alright. The cleanup agent was unconvinced, believing that Gregor's arm was a sign that he was starting to mutate, that he was turning into an insect-like monster. Then Gregor realized where this misunderstanding came from, as it's hard to tell it's hard to tell if it's a monstrous transformation or a part of one, a prosthetic or otherwise. Mesalt then went on to explain that it's a bioprosthetic that's older and outdated compared to that which was still made in the city. It's why it's rarely seen now. This cleared it up for the cleanup agent. He thought that they were trying to break in again, making it clear to them that his legs were messed up and that he had no choice but to hide in there. Urutis then asked what was W Corp's employees doing aboard that train, as in before it arrived. Dante saw her point, as based on the W Corp identities and what they knew about the warp trains, why would any of them willingly board that train? The cleanup agents knew that they were contracted by W Corp, and they were ordered to assist them with their contract. He's the only one left. The others lost their minds in the next car. Don Quixote asked if there was no way to cure the blood bags. Faust told her that there's no way to access that information right now. Dante noticed the gloom in her voice, even though it sounded serene. She quietly told Dante that she was too reliant on her network in too many places. Dante didn't know what to do to help the others like that either. They relied too much on Faust's knowledge, because she'd be able to help them, and that they don't have the means to get out of that kind of situation. Dante was too reliant on the others. If and when they can't rely on themselves, can they really manage them? Lead them to the right answers? A blend of doubt and fear rose like an ominous plume of smoke. The cleanup agent wasn't sure of what he could do. He struggled to a corner of that train car with his wounded leg and pulled on a lever. Ryushu thought that they made good use of that space. The wall behind had a folding chair and something for the employees that spun open. Don Quixote thought that it had a powerful weapon to deal with the blood fiends. Otis saw it as resembling what was in the capsule in the first-class car, asking why would it be in economy class. The cleanup agent slumped into the pod that appeared in the wall. Much to his relief, Don Quixote asked what he intended to do. Apparently this was a small hibernation pod for employees in case of that kind of emergency. Don Quixote was about to ask what he intended. He then told them good luck with the rest of the mission, settling into the capsule and shutting the hatch behind him. Only the folding chair and the viscera-covered wall remained. It was clear that he was likely infected and useless in battle, so he put himself inside of that hibernation capsule to prevent him from being a danger to others. Dante noted that he was gone, and Roger was a little annoyed that he chose to keep himself safe, as did Faust. Dante ordered them to move on to the next car. There they fought blood bags that used to be other cleanup agents, even utilizing their weapons. Yes, they can tell that they're getting closer to their target as the resistance was growing more fierce. Until next time.
Hail the rabbit!